Naughty Dog has very recently shadow dropped a final free update for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, a mode in which you can experience the story in complete chronological order. As a free update and a thought experiment, this was very cool to receive and play through. But no sooner had it dropped than people were claiming that this was a better way to tell the story, or even how it should have been from the start. It is neither of those things. From a storytelling perspective, while we might get a clearer idea of the chronology of events, those events lose emotional weight without the carefully considered context in which they are placed in the original cut of the story. This is especially true of flashbacks, which are all just presented as a job lot before we even get to the start of the actual narrative in Jackson. Sure, we see more of Joel before he dies, and those scenes are acted well, but we don't get to see these moments in the context of Ellie's emotional state as she pursues vengeance and goes through the grieving process, with her progress through her arc represented by what memories are her focus at the time. We also don't get anything of Joel after his death. His legacy and his memories to Ellie are static, a done deal before his death, and will not be recontextualized by Ellie's character journey. It simply doesn't hit as it did in the original version of the story. Likewise, knowing Abby's full identity and motivation from the off strips away any mystery about why she is in Jackson and makes Joel's death feel like an inevitability we saw coming, rather than a shock that puts the audience in Ellie's shoes because we, like her, didn't see it coming and feel her surprise, her rage, her inconsolable grief at such a horrific moment out of nowhere. Instead, some people have said it makes them empathise with Abby more from early on. And while that may be true, again, it serves only to pull us out of the story. The Last of Us Part 2 is a video game, and therefore uniquely placed to put us directly into a character's shoes and frame of mind because we control their actions. The way the story is meant to be told, that is used to put us squarely behind Ellie in her desire for justice, without question or doubt. It's only once we see the toll of the violence, both on the world and on Ellie herself, that we begin to wrestle with the idea that Ellie should not be doing this. Then it is too late, because we are tied to her, complicit in her actions, powerless to do anything but watch as the trauma of what we did washes over her. Only then, once we have been fully invested in Ellie's quest and paid the price for that emotionally, as Ellie also has, are we allowed to see why Abby did what she did and who she is. That switch didn't land with everyone, and that's fine. I'm not a big fan of stories trying to please everyone by playing it safe. They're boring and please nobody in the end. But if you allow yourself to stay on this journey, you see the other side of the story and understand why Abby did what she did. You also see Abby go through the end of the arc that Ellie is on, alienated from her friends by the violence she committed, and have to pull herself back from that by forging the connections of a new-found family, using violence to fight for something positive instead of reinforcing the negative status quo. In essence, you see her go on the same journey with Lev that Joel did with Ellie. The game also makes heavy use of dramatic irony, because of course she's pulled back into the consequences of her actions with the discovery of what Ellie has done to her friends. The other shoe takes a long time to drop, and only at the point when her arc reaches a high point, having found peace over her dad's death through positive actions in the present rather than by avenging the past, and having found a new family, making it all the more poignant when that found family is the reason that she lets Ellie and Dina live, rather than giving in to the cycle of violence and letting it consume her once again. Could all of this be told by switching between Ellie and Abby as often as in the chronological mode, rather than by leaving us immersed in first one character, then the other, as the original mode does? Sure, why not? But I contend that it would dampen the impact considerably. Without labouring the point, I've not come across anyone genuinely advocating for this kind of reordering of the story who didn't ultimately just not like the game. And that's fine. You're entitled to not like what you don't like, as long as you don't get weird about it or view someone else liking it as a provocation, which sadly a vocal minority do seem to. But if you didn't like the story, I'm willing to bet that you're still not going to like it in this order. And those of us who did like the story, whether we thought it a masterpiece or thought it well crafted but flawed, are probably going to like this version less than the original. A story isn't just a linear regurgitation of events in the order that they happened. It's the weaving of a narrative, to convey events, yes, but alongside them to give us an insight into characters' headspace, motivations and emotions, and to draw emotions out of us. Sometimes the most effective placement of events to do that is the linear one, but not always. Flashbacks are best placed where they recontextualize a moment we've just seen, or tell us more by implication about how a character is feeling. Even events in the present, happening at the same time but not the same place, can benefit from a deliberate choice in when to reveal them, rather than an adherence to strict chronology. And in a story which fundamentally is about perspectives, and how the same events can alter in meaning depending on whose viewpoint we look at them from, and what context we have, scrapping those deliberate choices and mindlessly hopping from one POV to another because the timeline demands it, makes the story all the weaker as a result. None of this is a criticism of Naughty Dog in adding the mode, by the way. It presents an interesting Easter egg and thought experiment, and some additional replay value. There's no downside to adding this mode. And my only complaint is that there's no permadeath or speedrun modes available for the chronological order. But the game gives a disclaimer that this mode is not intended for a first playthrough, and that the pacing is off, for a reason. If this had been the version of The Last of Us Part 2 that we got on release, it wouldn't have been better received. It would have still been as divisive a story, and the same bad faith actors would have farmed YouTube ad revenue off rage bait around the release. It just would have had fewer defenders on the other side, because the final product would have been far less satisfying than what we actually got. If you enjoyed this video, then give it a like and consider subscribing to keep up to date with all my content. Like the video that's just popped up, which YouTube thinks you should watch next. This is a Patreon and member supported channel, so if you want to become a member and unlock custom badges and emojis, early access to my videos, and your name in the credits, then click the join button below. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.